Hi Dragonflies, welcome back to Dragonfly Spirit Studio. I'm Lynn Bauer. I'm back with another postcard paint-along, but before I start, I need to address a couple of questions that are really kind of the motivation for this postcard paint-along. So some of you have asked me if I've stopped making these postcard paint-alongs because it's been so long since I released the last one. And other people have noticed that I now have the Postcard Club Zoom classes on my website, and you're concerned that that means that I won't be making any more free postcard paint-alongs to post on my YouTube channel, or that there are some special postcards that I make you pay for, and you can only get access if you take the class, and if those class times don't work for you, then you're out of luck. So to address the second question first, the Zoom classes are not paid because the postcards are some secret special postcards. They're paid classes because they're interactive. You can ask questions, I can help you when you get stuck, I can help you extend what you're learning in the class to your favorite palette, your favorite subject matter. So the demonstration portions of those Postcard Club classes will probably make their way to YouTube at some point as postcard paint-alongs. I can't promise exactly when because some things are a little easier to figure out how to teach in an interactive setting where people can ask questions and I can check in and make sure they're doing okay, than a self-study standalone setting where I have to try to anticipate any questions or problems that might arise so that you have a reasonable chance of success from just watching the demo and not being able to ask any questions while you're watching. I also intend to keep making the same kind of postcard paint-alongs that you've been seeing, and I just have to ask for your patience on this. It's kind of a new thing for me to try to paint within the constraints of a postcard and have something that a beginner can do with just a few materials, and it's still somewhat interesting and maybe useful to someone who has a little bit more experience. And it's something that I can present on video in a way that I think you'll have a reasonable chance of succeeding with trying the postcard just from watching the video without being able to ask a lot of questions or get coaching while you're working on it. So I do intend to keep doing them, but it's a little bit more than me just painting a postcard with everything I might imagine in the moment and everything that's available in my studio. They do take me between 20 and 60 hours of experimenting, and that didn't work, and trying new things, and then shooting them and editing them and getting them out to you. I'm not a professionally trained artist or a professionally trained videographer. I'm sure the pros could do it a lot faster, but it's amateur hour over here, folks. So I am putting them out as fast as I can. It is not a lack of regard for you or ignoring your pleas. I know you want them faster. I just can't get them out any faster and maintain the quality that you deserve and that you've come to expect from this channel. So I just want to reassure you, I am putting them out there. But this video is what can you do in the meantime while you're waiting for me to get my act together and get another postcard paint-along out to you. So what we're going to do in this video is look at one of the previous postcard paint-alongs, the Sunset Variations. And if you haven't done that one, I'll put the link down in the video description. But you don't have to watch it first. The idea is that many of these postcard paint-alongs kind of have a structure to them. There's a first step, and a second step, and a third step, and there's skills that we learned at the beginning, and the middle, and the end. And if you take those steps and those skills and change around the colors and change around the subject matter, you might be able to make a completely new postcard that basically uses the same things that you learned in that paint-along. So in this postcard paint-along, we're going to take the sequence and the skills from the Sunset Variations postcards, and we're going to apply them to different subject matter and come up with a completely new postcard. So let's get started with Moon Over the Ocean. In the Sunset Variations postcards, we were making a sunset scene, so we used bright oranges and yellows. I'm going to make this a moonlit scene, but instead of using black for the sky, I find that it works better to use a dark blue or a dark blue-green even. So I am making a mixture of ultramarine blue and phthalo turquoise. Now, if you don't have those colors, you could use Prussian blue, indigo, Indanthrone or anthracnone blue. Any dark, slightly grayed blue will work. You could add a little green to it if you want. And I'm going to add a little bit of quinacridone gold as well to take it a little more towards the green tones. So I've got a dark kind of grayed green. That's personal taste, so don't be too fixated on what colors I'm using. Use what colors you have on your palette. I think maybe I'll take it a little more towards the blue range. You can always test your colors on another sheet of paper before you put them on your actual painting. Okay, so I have my nighttime color mixed, and in the Sunset Variations Paint-Along, we used a coin to mask out the sun. We're going to use a coin again to mask out the full moon. And someone in the comments, some brilliant person came up with the idea of taking a little bit of kneaded eraser and sticking it on the coin as a handle. Thank you. I'm sorry I can't remember your name right now, but whoever came up with that brilliant idea, that was excellent. Thanks for that. That makes life a lot easier. So I'm going to position my full moon where I want it on the page. And then I'm going to take a piece of masking tape and just mask where my ocean horizon is going to be. I'm also going to use the same idea in this postcard to mask a little ocean rock. So I just tore this little rock shape out of a piece of scrap watercolor paper, and I'm going to stick it down. And unfortunately the kneaded eraser trick didn't work for this, but I can use a little piece of masking tape to make a handle to pick that up with. So I've got two physical objects that are going to act as my mask. I know that one's a little bit hard to see on the paper, but it doesn't have to be any particular shape. Anything that looks like a good rock sticking up out of the ocean is fine for you. And I have my horizon line masked, and now I'm going to take my spray bottle and I'm simply going to mist around both of these objects. And then fairly quickly, before there's time for everything to creep underneath, let's make sure we've got it misted, I'm going to lift them off. So that leaves two little dry areas, and I know you can't see them right now, but as I start putting the paint on the page, I can see them, and you'll see where they are because the paint moves up towards those dry areas, but not into them. So what I'm doing is I'm letting the spray on the page move the paint for me instead of having to carefully paint around those. And I'm going to leave some little sparkles around the moon, maybe to suggest sort of a little bit of mist in the air. And then otherwise I'm just going to come right down to my horizon. I'm going to paint. I don't have to paint right up to my line. I can just paint near it, and the water will move the paint up to that masked shape. And in any case, that shape doesn't have to be perfect, so I'm not too worried about it. And now I'm going to pull the tape off for my horizon line. And there's step one of our moon. Let's tip the page and drink up a little bit of this excess. I have quite a bit of water on the page, so to avoid having blooms or having it take forever to dry, I'll use my brush. I'm using my brush kind of like a mop, just mop up the excess, and then I'm blotting my brush on a towel. There we go. Now we need to let that dry and we'll come back and do the next step. All right, in step two of the Sunset Variations, we used an old credit card or something similar. This is an old park pass that I've cut up. You don't have to cut yours. I'm just going to use this one long edge. So anything you have like that, a loyalty card or a credit card, we're going to use that to make our sparkles in the water. So I began by putting a piece of tape again across my horizon line, and I put it just below the horizon line because once you have wet the paper once, a little bit of the sizing gets removed and it's more likely to creep underneath. So I'm leaving a little bit of white showing here. And then I'm going to just cover up the rest with something to keep the spray off of it and spritz my area of water. And my goal is not to completely soak everything, but to have little droplets and little dry places. Then I'm going to come over here and take some of my sky color and darken it up just a little bit. And then I'll paint it right across the edge of my card and just tap the card down, because when you see sparkles in the water at a distance, they tend to show up against more or less a horizontal line. I'm also going to come all the way across the page near my rock. And then as I come to the foreground, since this is water, I'm going to add a little bit more of that gold, or you could add a little more green for the shallower water. And instead of just dragging down, this time I'm going to drag in little arcs, hoping that that will help me create the sense of some breaking waves. Might or might not. This is kind of luck of the draw when you do this kind of thing, where it's already, the page is spritzed. Sometimes you get what you want and sometimes you don't. But it's a postcard, so if it doesn't turn out exactly what you had in mind, that's all right. So before this has a chance to creep underneath, I'm going to pull the tape off. And now most of the sparkles will be directly in front of the moon, so I'm going to come in now, again with some bluer color, and I'm going to paint my water and kind of meet up with the area of sparkles. Now when I get to my rock, I actually will have my rock come down into the water a little bit, and I want to leave a little bit of light there that could be little rough water underneath the rock, so I'm actually going to come back and take care of this part when I paint the rock. So leave a little bit there. Now this looks like it could be a breaking wave, so let's let that kind of be a wave. There's one in the distance. So I kind of look for what's already happened and see what I can do with it. I think as I come into the foreground here, I'm going to add, again, a little bit more of that gold for the shallower water, or maybe there's even some sand showing. Kind of just look for anything that sort of looks like it might be a breaking wave and turn it into one. It's all about suggesting things instead of painting every little detail when it comes to postcards. All right, instead of fussing and fiddling, I think I'll stop at that point and we'll let this dry and then we'll do the next step. Okay, so the third step in the Sunset Variations postcard was to add some darker shapes in the foreground to kind of help make the light come out, and our rock is going to play that role for us here. But I do want a little bit of moonlight falling on my rock, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix the color for my rock from my sky color with just a little bit of burnt umber added to it, so it's a little bit grayer than everything else. Nice and dark. And then I'm going to think about where the shadows would fall. They're going to be mostly in this area on the rock. There's going to be a little light that reflects up from the water, so I don't necessarily want to come down to the water with really dark shadows. But I'm going to start over here in this shadow area and lay in some of my darker color. And over on the far side of the rock, I'll just kind of follow whatever's going on there from my torn shape. Not be too particular about that. There might be a little bit of light showing on this far side, but since this is a postcard, I'm not going to get involved in trying to micromanage that part. But now I'm going to add a little water as I come towards the moonlit side so that the color is paler. And I'll use this paler color also and just kind of wiggle my brush up and down by the water to leave just a little bit of light there where there might be some surf breaking against the rock. And now finally I'm just going to take the dirty water that's in my cup and use that dirty water to pull this color up to this edge. And all those sparkles in the rock, instead of staying sparkles, they'll just stay somewhat lighter areas. They kind of give me an idea about making this edge a little rough. So they don't show up in the end. I'm actually painting my rock shape, but they're subtly underneath there just a little bit. All right, and now if I like, I can drop in a little bit more dark color into the shadow area. And I can also take a little bit of clear water and drop it on this side and see if maybe I'll get lucky and get some intentional blooms to suggest kind of the roughness of the rock. Now blooms take a little while to develop, so don't go jumping in there with a hairdryer right away. Let them kind of have some time to move the paint. And so we'll do that. We'll let these blooms have time to develop, and then we'll pull off the tape, or dry it and pull off the tape and see what we think. All right, so it's dry and we've taken off the tape, and I'm actually quite happy with that. So there is another postcard where we used the same sequence of a sky with a round object, which is the moon this time, even though it was the sun last time. Then we did some water with some sparkles in it, and then we did a darker object to help us give some contrast to the sky. Now, I want to just mention, this doesn't have to be a round object here. You could have perhaps a sailboat. And if you could find a triangular shape that would work for you to mask the sail of your sailboat, you could use the same strategy for something like a sailboat against a cloudy sky, which would allow you to leave some little bits of cloud around your sail. So use your imagination and use this sequence of building blocks and sequence of techniques to see if you can come up with postcards of your own about completely different subjects that use the very same structure and the very same skills, but are your very own inventions. So I hope you have fun with it, and I hope this gives you something to kind of tide you over until I get the next Postcard Paint-Along out with some new techniques. So go and mine some of the other ones. I'm sure that you can also do the same thing with many of the other Postcard Paint-Alongs where you take the ideas and make them your own. So I'll see you next time. Happy painting.